Imagine this picture. Stunning coastline, vibrant traditions, historic forts, beautiful nature.
Yeah, a really idyllic scene.
But it's not static, right? This place, Sindhudurg, is changing, and changing pretty fast,
Yeah.
especially its real estate market.
Definitely. There's a lot happening there.
So what's actually driving that? What does it mean on the ground? That's what we want to unpack today.
Sounds good.
We're doing a deep dive into the real estate scene in Sindhudurg district down there in Maharashtra on the west coast.
And we've got some great comprehensive sources to work from here.
Exactly. Think of this as your shortcut to getting up to speed on this really dynamic area. We want to understand the drivers, the complexities.
Maybe spot some of the opportunities, too.
Okay, so let's set the scene first. Sindhudurg, it's been officially a tourism district since, 1997?
That's right. Famous for beaches like Tarkarli, Van Gurla, those amazing forts, too. Sindhudurg Fort itself, the Sea Fort, apparently draws like 70% of the visitors.
Wow, 70%.
Yeah, and Vijaydur Fort, too. Plus, water sports are getting big.
And traditionally, the economy was more agriculture, fisheries, some mining.
Correct. But that's clearly shifting. You can really see it in the real estate market.
So tell us about that picture. What's happening with property development?
Well, there's definitely a noticeable increase in activity. And it's a real mix of players involved.
Okay.
You've got your bigger, organized developers. They're launching these large-scale projects, especially popping up near new infrastructure, like the Konkan Expressway we'll talk about.
Right.
Then there are smaller, mid-sized developers, too. A lot of them are RERA registered now, which helps with transparency.
Good for buyers.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then you have local builders, focused maybe more on the direct tourism stuff, hotels, homestays, even things like water parks.
And government bodies are in the mix, too.
Yeah, MHADA, for instance, they're involved in some land acquisition and housing schemes.
So quite a diverse landscape of developers. What about the types of properties being built?
Again, it's diverse, driven largely by tourism and this booming second home market. So you see apartments, villas, residential plots are quite popular.
People like to build their own.
Seems so.
Yeah.
And even large agricultural plots being looked at for, potential conversion down the line. Plus commercial, of course, shops, hotels, resorts.
And are there any particular trends in the style of development?
Yes, definitely a trend towards integrated townships, gated communities, things with lifestyle amenities, clubhouses, pools, security. That appeals to the urban buyer, the second home seeker. Plotted developments, as I said, are also big.
Okay, so that paints a good picture of what's happening. Now let's get into the why. What are the engines really driving all this growth?
I think you have to start with connectivity. That's just fundamental, how easily people can get to tech. Sindhudurg is changing everything. It's a huge catalyst.
Right, access is key. What are the big pieces there?
Well, first, there's Chipi Airport. It's actually in Sindhudurg, operational since October 2021. The main aim was boosting local tourism and jobs.
Okay, so a local airport.
Yes, but then, and this is what the sources call a game changer, there's the MOP Airport, Manohar International in North Goa.
In Goa. How does that impact Sindhudurg?
Because it's surprisingly close. Only about 14 kilometers from a key industrial area in Sindhudurg called Adali.
Ah, okay.
And apparently its opening caused a huge jump, like 25 to 40% in property prices in those nearby parts of Sindhudurg.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's basically pushing Sindhudurg into becoming a serious second home destination. You get spillover effect, plus OMUP has its own Arosity plans generating buzz.
So you get this dual airport advantage, cheapy for local, OPA for wider access.
Exactly, that's a massive plus. It puts Sindhudurg on the radar for a whole different level of investor and buyer.
Okay, that makes total sense. Better air access just opens up the market. What about on the ground? Roads?
That's the other massive piece. The Konkan Expressway, the Mumbai-Goa Coastal Highway, it's nearing completion. They're saying maybe June 2025.
And the promise is much faster travel times.
Drastically faster. Cutting Mumbai-Goa down to maybe 6 to 8 hours, potentially even faster, like 5 or 6 hours, once all the NH66 upgrades connected to it are done.
That's huge.
Absolutely. And it's not just about speed between the endpoints. That highway acts like a development corridor through Sindhudurg.
Ah, so it opens up inland areas.
Precisely. Areas near the interchanges, places like Kankavli, Kudal, Sawantwadi, suddenly become much more accessible from the big cities. Land values there are definitely going up.
So air and road are transforming access. Anything else? Ports?
Yeah, maritime is on the radar too. Reddy and Vijaydur ports are being looked at for more trade. Less direct impact on residential maybe, but part of the overall infrastructure upgrade.
Okay.
And there's a cool little detail, a ro-ro ferry service planned from Mumbai to Malvan, maybe starting around Ganpati season.
Oh, interesting. Like for cars and passengers?
Yeah, another way for tourists, maybe light cargo too. Yeah. Makes those coastal towns even more attractive for weekend trips or second homes. So you've got air, road, and maybe sea all improving access.
Okay, so connectivity is clearly driver number one. What's next? Tourism growth itself must be huge, given its history.
For sure. It's the foundation, really. That
Yeah.
tourism district status isn't just a label. We mentioned the attractions, beaches, forts, water sports, adventure stuff.
Right.
Pre-COVID numbers were pretty solid, like 12 to 14 lakh tourists a year. Took a hit in 2022, obviously, but the expectation is strong growth coming back, especially with the better connectivity now.
And how does that expected tourism rebound feed into real estate?
Well, directly, it just fuels demand for places to stay.
Mhm.
Hotels, resorts, homestays, the whole hospitality sector.
Is there government support for that?
Oh, yeah. The Maharashtra Tourism Policy 2024 wants to attract private investment, basically double the state's tourist numbers. Yeah. Sindhudurg is a key beneficiary. And Swadesh Darshan 2.0, that's a central scheme, has a specific master plan for Sindhudurg.
What does that plan involve?
It identifies opportunities for public-private partnerships,
Yeah.
developing beaches, forts, eco-lodges, luxury projects, houseboats, agritourism, glamping, you name it.
So trying to diversify the offering?
Exactly. And targeting gaps,
Yeah.
like the lack of high-end luxury accommodation currently.
Are there any specific unique projects coming up?
Yeah, a couple of really interesting ones. There's the INS Goldar Artificial Reef Project. They're sinking an old warship near Navadi Rocks.
Wow. To create a dive site?
Precisely. India's first major artificial reef project, positioned as a top scuba destination. And there's also talk of a 22-seater submersible vessel.
Like a tourist submarine.
Sounds like it. These kinds of projects aim to attract niche tourists, maybe higher spending ones, looking for unique experiences beyond just the beach.
Diversifying the attractions, diversifying the visitors. Got it.
Okay, so we've got connectivity, we've got tourism. What about the local economy itself? Is anything changing there to drive housing demand from within?
Yes, that's another angle. The district is trying to move beyond just the traditional sectors. Industrial diversification is a focus.
A key part of that seems to be the proposed Adali Pharma Hub by MIDC.
The state's industrial development body.
Right. And the focus is very specific. Non-polluting units. Things like pharma formulation, making medical machinery, allied industries.
And that non-polluting focus is deliberate because of the environment.
Exactly. It has to align with Sindhudurg's eco-sensitive status. We'll talk more about that later, but it's critical. The goal here is local jobs, especially for graduates. Maybe even reverse some of the outward migration.
And it has incentives for investors.
Yes, it's in a Zone D category, which means significant benefits for companies setting up there.
What about smaller businesses?
There's support there, too.
Yeah.
An MSME technology center is being set up, about 182 crores invested, focused on general engineering and food processing, providing training and support.
And they have a one district, one product?
Yeah, process cashew, playing to local strengths. So the idea is this kind of careful industrial development builds a stronger local economy, creating more local demand for housing and services.
Okay, so infrastructure, tourism, some industry. What about the buyers themselves? Are preferences changing?
Absolutely. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. There's growing demand from urban investors, Mumbai, Pune mainly, also second home buyers, retirees, people looking for holiday homes, and even NRIs.
And what's drawing them specifically to Sindhudurg?
A mix of things. The simple desire for leisure, a place for workations, which are much more feasible now.
Right, the whole work from anywhere trend.
Exactly. Investment potential, of course.
Yeah.
And importantly, it's seen as an alternative to places like Goa, Lonavala, Alibag, which have become very expensive or maybe too saturated for some.
So what are the key drivers for these buyers?
Improved connectivity is number one, especially MOP Airport, making it so much easier to reach. The general wellness trend, wanting to be closer to nature, that hybrid work culture, increasing wealth among high net worth individuals, a desire for a more eco-friendly lifestyle, which fits Sindhudurg's image.
And value for money compared to Goa.
That's a big one. Comparative affordability is definitely a major draw.
Is there potential for rental income too for investors?
The sources mentioned that, yeah. An average yield around 7.2% reported, which makes buying a holiday home that you can also rent out quite appealing.
7.2%, that's pretty decent.
It is. And all this anticipation, the infrastructure, tourism, new buyers, it does seem to be fueling some speculative buying too. pushing up prices in certain pockets.
Which brings us nicely to where is the action concentrated? Which locations are the current hotspots?
You can see clear zones emerging. The Konkan Expressway corridor is one, especially near those interchanges like Kankavli, Kudal, Sawantwadi. That's where you're seeing more plotted developments, townships targeting the Mumbai Pune crowd.
Capitalizing on the easier road access.
Exactly. Then you have the traditional coastal tourism, built Malvan, Vengurla, Devgad, still key for hospitality, your boutique hotels, homestays, but there's a recognized gap and opportunity for more upscale resorts there too.
Especially with that Swadesh Darshan focus you mentioned.
Right. And then the industrial growth areas, like Adali village near Kudal, linked to that pharma hub proposal. That's creating localized housing demand. Plus general activity in the district HQ, Oros, and places like Banda near the Goa border.
Okay, so we have these drivers, these hotspots. But development, especially rapid development in a sensitive area like this, is never simple, is it? There must be challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Big ones. Perhaps the most significant factor shaping development here is the regulatory environment. It's crucial to understand this,
Why so complex?
because Sindhudurg is both coastal, and a large part of it falls within the Western Ghats Eco-Sensitive Area, the ESA. So you have layers of strict environmental rules.
Okay, let's unpack that. First,
Yeah.
the coastal rules, CRZ.
Right, coastal regulation zone norms. With 121 kilometers of coastline, these are critical. They restrict what you can build near the high tide line. There are different zones, CRZI, T3, each with different rules.
And getting approvals is tough.
It requires clearances from both the state level, MCZMA, and the central ministry, MOUFCC. It takes time, adds cost. There was a change in 2019 allowing local bodies to approve small houses under 300 square meters, which helps a bit for smaller individual projects.
Are the overall plans finalized?
The coastal zone management plans, the CZMPs, are still going through approval, so there's some uncertainty there too. Basically, CRZ compliance is a major hurdle, and it limits how much land is actually available right on the coast. Properties with existing approvals, they definitely command a premium.
Okay, that's the coast. What about the Western Ghats ESA designation?
That covers significant chunks of the district, especially inland.
And what does that restrict?
It prohibits certain activities outright. New mining, thermal power plants, large polluting red category industries, and very large construction projects, anything over 20,000 square meters of built-up area.
But what about existing homes or farming?
That's key. The rules allow repair and renovation of existing houses, and they explicitly state there's no displacement or impact on agriculture. It does regulate orange category, moderately polluting industries.
Which is why that Adali Pharma Hub is focused only on non-polluting types.
Exactly. It has to be, because of the ESA rules. So this balancing act between development and ecology isn't just a goal, it's legally mandated.
A major challenge, but maybe also a good thing long-term.
You could argue that. While it makes development harder, it forces more sustainable practices. And ultimately, preserving the natural beauty is what draws people there, so it could enhance long-term value if done right.
What about issues with land itself? Ownership, records?
Yeah, that adds another layer. Land acquisition isn't always straightforward. You can run into historical disputes, unclear titles. There are efforts to modernize land records, things like Jivant 712, the digital records, and the National DLI-RMP program.
To improve transparency.
Exactly. Clearer titles are vital for investor confidence. But even with these efforts, anyone buying or developing needs to do very careful due diligence on land titles.
Okay, beyond regulations and land titles, any other practical hurdles on the ground?
Several. While the big state-level infrastructure is coming, local utilities sometimes lag. Consistent water supply, reliable high-speed internet, especially outside the big integrated projects, need to keep pace.
Infrastructure needs to match the growth.
Definitely. The terrain itself can be rugged, posing construction and logistical challenges sometimes. Regulatory delays, even beyond the big environmental clearances, can add time and uncertainty.
And the risk of things getting ahead of themselves?
Yes, speculative risk. If prices rise too fast just on hype, without real economic growth catching up, you could see bubbles in some areas. And execution risk, if those big anchor projects, public or private, face delays, it impacts related real estate.
What about the local community?
That's important too. Social acceptance. Development needs to be sensitive, avoid friction, and ideally ensure that local people see benefits too, not just disruption.
Right. So pulling all these threads together, the strong drivers, the hotspots, but also these significant complexities, what's the overall market outlook?
Well, the trend is definitely towards more formalization, more RERA-registered projects mean better transparency, more buyer protection, at least in the organized segment.
And the general feeling?
Bullish.
Bearish.
Generally bullish, I'd say, but very fragmented. It's not one single market. Opportunities and risks vary a lot depending on which specific micromarket within Sindhudurg you're looking at. Coastal villages versus expressway interchanges versus near the industrial zone, very different dynamics.
So what does this mean for different players? What do the sources suggest?
For developers, the advice seems to be meticulous due diligence is non-negotiable. Focus on sustainability you have to, given the rules. Maybe specialize in a niche or micromarket. Tourism ventures look promising. Engage positively with local communities. And consider those integrated models where you provide some of your own infra.
And for policymakers.
The need is for clarity, especially on things like the final CZMPs. Streamlining approvals where possible. Investing in that public infrastructure backbone. Making PPPs work effectively. Strengthening environmental protection while still allowing growth. Ensuring local communities benefit. And improving data transparency.
Okay, so wrapping this up for our listener, what does this all mean for you as you think about Sindhudurg?
I think the big picture is this. Sindhudurg is a market being powerfully reshaped by major external forces. Those big transport projects, the expressway, the airports, the government's tourism push, and changing lifestyles driving urban buyers to look for alternatives. It's a fascinating case study in rapid regional transformation.
But it's not just a simple boom story.
Not at all. It also really highlights the crucial balancing role of environmental regulation. It's not just background noise. It actively shapes how and where development can happen. And it underscores the need for local infrastructure, water, power, internet to keep pace, ensuring growth is actually sustainable and benefits everyone long term.
So Sindhudurg's future path, its real estate story, it's all tied up in this complex dance between tourism dreams, infrastructure reality, and that critical need to balance growth with preserving its unique environment.
Exactly. Big picture forces driving it, but success hinges on getting those local fundamentals, regulations, infrastructure right.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Given this intense focus on tourism as the main economic engine, and the district's delicate eco-sensitive status demanding protection, what happens if development outpaces the ability to preserve that environment?
Or, on the flip side, what if the hoped-for economic boom from all this infrastructure and tourism push doesn't quite fully materialize?
How might either scenario shape Sindhudurg's unique identity and future trajectory? It's this intersection of environment, economy, and development that really makes Sindhudurg such a dynamic and interesting place to watch right now.